me a light. Thank you. How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Orson Welles. I'm speaking for the Mercury Theater, and what follows is supposed to advertise our first motion picture. Citizen Kane is the title, and we hope it can correctly be called a coming attraction. It's certainly coming to this theater, and I think our Mercury actors make it an attraction. I'd like you to meet them. Speaking of attractions, well, the chorus girls are certainly an attraction, but frankly, ladies and gentlemen, we're just showing you the chorus girls for purposes of ballyhoo. It's pretty nice ballyhoo. But here's some of our real Mercury people. This is the first time you've seen most of them on the screen. Hey, give Joe a little light. Thanks. Now smile for the folks, Joe. Smile. Joseph Cotton, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. Joseph Cotton. I think you're going to see a lot of him. Here's Ruth Warwick, whom I know you love. Ruth. Look at the camera, Ruth. We caught Ruth with her hair up. And here's somebody you've all heard on the radio, so I don't have to tell you he's wonderful. Ray Collins. Dorothy Commengore is a name I'm going to repeat. Dorothy Commengore. I won't have to repeat it much longer. You'll be repeating it. And here's George Coulouris, who's a grand actor. I'll say that name again. George Coulouris. Watch it. Here comes Everett Sloane. Look out, Everett. Oops. Everett Sloane, ladies and gentlemen, he isn't necessarily a comedian. And here's one of the best actors in the world, Agnes Moorehead. I've said a lot of nice things, but Erskine Sanford deserves some more. Erskine Sanford. So does Paul. Paul Stewart, everybody. Citizen Kane is a modern American story about a man called Kane, Charles Foster Kane. I don't know how to tell you about him. There's so many things to say. I'll turn you over instead to the characters in the picture. As you'll see, they feel very strongly on the subject.
Charles Foster Kane is...
Sure, he started the war. But do you think if it hadn't been for Mr. Kane, the United States would have the Panama Canal?
Charles Foster Kane is nothing more or less than a communist.
Kane, governor. Listen, when the voters of this state and Mrs. Kane learn what I found out about Mr. Kane and a certain little blondie named Susan Alexander, he couldn't be elected dog catcher. I'm going to skin Mr. Charles Foster Kane alive.
I'm going to marry him next week at the White House.
Emily, I hear you've been stepping out with Charlie Kane.
Of course I love him. I gave him $60 million.
Well, of course I love him. He's the richest man in America.
But all the girls say about him at first.
But you know, I can't help but admire him.
He's crazy.
It's wonderful.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what you'll think about Mr. Kane. I can't imagine. You see, I play the part myself. Well, Kane is a hero and a scoundrel, a no-account and a swell guy, a great lover, a great American citizen, and a dirty dog. It depends on who's talking about him. What's the real truth about Charles Foster Kane? I wish you'd come to this theater when Citizen Kane plays here and decide for yourself.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Take Two. I'm Bob Whiteford, and sitting to my right here, the lovely Catherine McDonald. Jim Dee is taking a well-deserved night off, and that was a clip from Citizen Kane, which probably the parting of the Red Sea was maybe a little shorter in duration than that trailer. But that's a kind of a teaser for what we'll be talking about tonight.
And tonight, should we reveal our topic first of all?
Well, maybe we'll reveal our topic, and then we'll go right to the news releases.
We do have some very interesting things coming up here in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara in the way of film-related news. First, I'll tell everyone about the San Luis Obispo Film Society is having a fantastic premiere this Thursday here at the Fremont Theater of a movie called Shade. Now, something very special about this film. It's the first feature of a gentleman who grew up in San Luis Obispo County. It's going to be a star-studded event, very fun. The premiere of this movie, Shade, is 8 o'clock this Thursday at the Fremont Theater. Tickets are $15. People who are members of the Film Society are invited to go to a pre-party. You can find out more information at slowfilmfest.org. And if you're not a Slow Film Society member, there's also information on how to become a member there.
Gosh, and Hal Holbrook and Bo Hopkins are going to be
That
there?
is correct, Bob Whiteford.
Well, I'm going to get my leisure suit out of the cleaners and get over there.
It should be an excellent event, and really we encourage people to go and check it out.
God, how exciting. I also have a news release. Allen Hancock College presents Film Fest '04. Looking for the next Steven Spielberg? Yeah, he's right under here. You might find him at the Allen Hancock College Film Fest '04, an annual screening of student films on Friday and Saturday, May 21st and 22nd. Showtime is 7 p.m., both evenings in the Building C Forum on the Santa Maria campus. The event will feature narrative films, documentaries, animation, and computer editing, in addition to the inaugural Film Fest competition with professionals from the film and television industry judging the films. Admission is $4 for pre-sale tickets available from the Fine Arts Department in Building F, or $5 at the door on the night of the show. For more information, call 1-866-DIAL-AHC extension 3252.
That's a great number.
Yeah, it is.
It's a secret code.
1-866-DIAL-AHC extension 3252.
Oh, I see. Dial Allen Hancock College. That's AHC. There we go.
They're pretty clever. They're smarter than I am. But I think it's pretty exciting. Check it out, folks.
And our last bit of film news in our area is at the fantastic folks at UCSB Arts and Lectures. They're putting on 2 screenings of The Triplets of Belleville. Now, this is a very Oscar-nominated animation film. If people have not seen it, this might be a really great chance to see this fantastic animation film. It's on May 21st at 7:30 or at 9:30 at UCSB Campbell Hall. And if you would like more information on that, you can give a call at 893-3535 or visit them online at artsandlectures.ucsb.edu.
Just as a follow-up on my announcement, the phone number is 1-866-342 5242 extension 3252. 342-5242 extension 3252 for the Allen Hancock College Film Fest 2004. And that kind of segues into what we'll be talking about tonight, Catherine. And our subject, which these announcements were very timely, is about first-time filmmakers. And how sometimes they hit a home run first time out and then spend the rest of their careers trying to find themselves, or the other type of first-time filmmaker that kind of builds, through maybe a few failures, some low-budget shenanigans, and kind of work his or her way up the ladder to where they're making great films. And as we noticed from our first clip, we played a trailer from Citizen Kane, of course. That's Orson Welles. And we know that Citizen Kane is an all-time classic and a very expensive and controversial movie when it came out in 1941. It was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, and it led to him getting into a little bit of trouble with the powers that be, William Randolph Hearst, and the moguls at RKO Radio Pictures. Now, he continued to have a great career afterwards, but because he had kind of pushed a lot of people the wrong way right out the bat, he never quite fulfilled the promise, and it's not for lack of talent. I think studio politics had a lot to do with it, but he never equaled his success with Citizen Kane, the first movie he made.
I'm thinking of our theme tonight in the terms of being sort of the parabolic effect, if you will, of directors. Some people start off very high, and the question is, where do you go when you've hit the highest heights? Or some people start off low, and they build their career, like you say, one film after another, really learning from that process. And I was really inspired by this topic, talking to a young filmmaker named Paul Baker, and he was telling me about wanted to provide me a copy with his second film, and he said, my first film, unwatchable, but he really made it clear, and he spoke very eloquently about building on failures as a filmmaker as a way to really kind of get your chops. And it meant a lot to me, and I started thinking about a lot of the directors, and who their whole filmography starts off from very simple, smaller films, and to where now they are the top names and directors. The counterpoint to that, as you mentioned, is there are also just equally as many of directors who make it big right off the bat, and it's so hard. It's so hard to live up to the acclaim that you get from those first films. We were talking about the Magnificent Ambersons, which was Orson Welles' second film. This film almost has a legend behind it because of that studio pressure to try and kill that film. This sort of this mystique built around it of what could have been in this film. The studios, he wanted to have it to be a 2.5 hour film, and they wanted to cut it down to 100 minutes, or there's all kinds of problems. So this mystique almost built up around it as to what this film could have achieved. And I think that speaks so clearly to this. You get to the height of Citizen Kane, and what's
fascinating about this one, Kitty, is with Magnificent Ambersons, if you watch the film closely, you can really see there's 2/3 of the movie, it's one way, or 3/4 of it, it's Wells's vision. And what happened was, 3/4 of the way through, the RKO execs are seeing the rushes, and they're also sitting and having their meetings, puffing on their cigars, going, this kid's too big for his britches.
Right.
We got to cut him down. And during the filming of Magnificent Ambersons, 1942, the U.S. had just entered World War II. So the film industry being a top priority, the same as armaments or anything else in the war plans or the war effort, RKO decides to send Orson Welles to South America to film a propaganda film called It's All True. Basically what they do is they ship him to Brazil, and then they leave him there. He's stranded. And what happens is they get his film editor, Robert Wise, who I might add is a King Vidor Award winner from the Slow Film Festival. And they bring him in to shoot the last reel. And basically what they do is they've scrapped everything that Welles shot. And legend has it that the executives drank cognac one night, smoked their cigars, and went out to the Pacific and threw Wells's ending into the Pacific Ocean, never to be seen again.
I think the legend about this film is so important because it really illustrates that desire for someone to achieve something as so great, especially when there's that history of Citizen Kane behind you, that there's that sense of promise of doing something so amazing with film and reaching those new heights. That's why, to me, that the legend of it is so important.
Absolutely. And, of course, Welles himself, a legend. I mean, he left us with many great films. I mean, I think of Touch of Evil, Lady from Shanghai, to name a few. But all of them have been really messed with. I'm trying to find the proper words. I know Guy is breathing into his paper bag right now. We don't want the FCC coming down on us. But they've messed a lot of his films afterwards. All of them had been messed with. Now we have the restored version of Touch of Evil, which is superior to the studio version. But, sadly that came 10 years after Welles died, so it's a shame.
Absolutely.
But, thinking about this, how about another director that hit one out of the park the first time out, and then kind of disappeared. And I'm thinking about Tim Hunter, who directed River's Edge. Hank, how about number 3 on there?
Fack!
Check's in the mail.
It's me, Feck Lane. Don't shoot, okay?
I could blow your brains out.
I know,
I
Feck.
shot a girl once.
I know. You keep telling me that, Feck. You want to lower that barrel some? I am your friend.
Yeah, you say so, huh? You're my friend?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so. Don't you try anything. Why don't you and Matt come in and see Ellie?
Oh, I'd love to, Feck, but we're late for school. And...
Oh, yeah. Well, how much you want then?
Oh, come on. No, dude, I came by to see how you're doing. Good old Feck,
good old Feck. Yeah. How much you want?
Just a couple joints.
That was Dennis Hopper and the terrific Crispin Glover from Tim Hunter's first film, River's Edge. Actually, it's not his first film. I believe he did one called Tex with Matt Dillon in 1979 and something else called Sylvester. But I don't even know if they were ever released formally. They kind of just maybe disappeared or went straight to video. This was the first film of his that I saw released in the theaters, and Catherine and I were talking during the clip. This is one of the best films I've ever seen. It's incredible. And what's amazing about this film, aside from the fact that Keanu Reeves appears like he can actually act, which we were commenting on as well, this film is based on a true story about some kids in a California town that find a dead body and don't tell anybody about it, and all the implications thereof. This film, Catherine, it's 14 years old, 15 years old now, and it stands up so well. What a great film. And then you wonder, what happened? What happened? I mean, Tim Hunter's follow-up film was actually pretty good. It was called Paint It Black. It takes place in Santa Barbara, and it took place in the Santa Barbara art community about some sculptor played by Rick Rossovich, a veteran of many B-movie, straight-to-video action sci-fi films. Sally Kirkland's in it as well. Kind of a cult film, but guess what, folks? It never got any kind of distribution. It was produced by some West Germans, and at the time West Germany, and the thing just got kind of shelved, and eventually it came out on video, but his career completely lost its momentum. Directing episodes of Carnival, we all know what happened there, other TV stuff, and that's it. What happened?
For making a movie that had a severe, extreme impact on not only just critical acclaim, but it was an indie film that was it was causing a sensation, and I think that it has really influenced a lot of films that deal with teen angst, if you will. And it was such an influential and important movie when it came out, and then for the director not to really be seen after that, it is a little surprising.
Well, this is, Catherine, it came out right after Blue Velvet. Dennis Hopper is in both films. He's great in both films. And for my money, this is like the 1-2 punch, the best movies of the 80s, the two movies that kind of strip away the phony veneer of the time and just say, look at who we are. Aren't we ugly? And whereas Lynch continued to make even better films, well, I don't even know if he ever made anything better than Blue Velvet personally, but he still made great, interesting films. Tim Hunter disappears. It's kind of a shame. And We'll never really know why, but this is a case in point where a guy hits a home run, big time, first time out, and then nothing. See you later, or not even a see you later. Where are you? What's happening? What's going on? I hope he's still working. I guess he's working in TV and whatnot. And compare that to, say, Martin Scorsese when he first started. He did a film at NYU called Who's That Knocking at My Door with a very young Harvey Keitel. And he made it over a span of a couple of years, kind of like the way David Lynch did Eraserhead. Only instead of Jack Nance with the Eraserhead, Scorsese has Harvey Keitel. And basically that film is terrific, but it's the seed from which Mean Streets would eventually create the mystique of Scorsese and make Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro big stars, especially De Niro. And in between, Scorsese did Boxcar Bertha with David Carradine and Barbara Hershey for Roger Corman. And I think you have to mention, Catherine, Roger Corman here. Here's a guy who ran a film school for people that wanted to do films. Peter Bogdanovich did his first films for Roger Corman. Francis Ford Coppola did his first films for Roger Corman. Of course, Coppola's first was something called Tonight for Sure, a nudie cutie. Ron Howard did his first films for Roger Corman, Jonathan Demme. I mean, we could go on and on. That's a show in itself. But that kind of thing doesn't exist anymore.
We can also look at a different example of sort of the opposite of what we've been talking about up to here, and that is Steven Soderbergh. This would be the other side of the parabola, somebody who built from a small endeavor to greatness. Steven Soderbergh's first film was Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and we actually do have a clip from that, so we're going to listen to that right now.
Good show.
What are these?
Those are videotapes.
I can see that. Of what?
It's a personal project I've been working on.
What kind of personal project?
What?
What kind of personal project?
A personal project like anyone else's personal project. Mine's just a little more personal, I guess.
Who's Donna?
What?
Donna. It says Donna here on the tape.
Donna was a girl I knew in Florida.
Oh, you went out with her?
No, not really.
Why do these tapes all have women's names on them?
Well, I enjoy interviewing women more than men.
That's James Spader and Andy McDowell in Steven Soderbergh's first film, Sex, Lies, and Videotape. I think that came out around 1989, thereabouts.
Maybe earlier, yeah.
Yeah, thereabouts.
And this film made a big splash in the indie world. Steven Soderbergh had worked as a cinematographer, and in some of his films still today, he is the director of photography, which I always think is a very interesting twist. But I offer up Steven Soderbergh as an example of somebody who came out with a very simple, small film. I like that term, the small film. It made a huge impact in the independent art house movie world. It won a lot of awards. I believe it won at Sundance, and that was one of the first kind of crossing overs for Sundance to be the where independent films are discovered, because it made this particular film, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, made such a splash with audiences. And Steven Soderbergh has really just done an amazing job at building upon that success, building up to Oscar-winning films like Traffic, box office smashes like Ocean's 11. And he has really crafted his movies from that point, from this very small film. And what I think he's such a great example is because Steven Soderbergh, a couple of times with some of his movies, has gone back to those roots of the small film. There was a film a couple of years ago, mixed reviews, called Full Frontal, And he really said, I read a couple of interviews with Steven Soderbergh that said he really felt a need to go back to that very cut and run, early, low budget, flying by the seat of your trousers kind of filmmaking. He really felt like a need to do that. And I feel like that's reaching back to the roots of where he came from. I actually happen to like Full Frontal because it was a good commentary on filmmaking and, the industry, if you can accept me calling it that, at large. But he is, to me, is a perfect example of someone who is in a very intelligent way, built upon his successes to achieve cinematic greatness.
Absolutely. I mean, you could definitely, look at some of the stuff he did. Kafka with Jeremy Irons and Sir Alec Guinness. Black and white film came out, I think, maybe around 1990. What a fascinating film that was. Yeah, this guy, he's done, granted, Ocean's 11, that gives me real gastrointestinal problems.
Fun. Oh, come on. That's popcorn fun.
I saw it. It wasn't as terrible as I thought. Carl Reiner and Elliot Gould saved it for me, being the traditionalist here. But I got to say, I like the idea that he went back after that big budget, big grossing film, all loaded with stars. I like George Clooney, too, by the way. And then he went back and did a low-budget film, and he demanded that all his stars, like Julia Roberts et al., that they had to behave like low-budget actresses. They couldn't be waited on, and they'd have to keep their tantrums to a minimum, and apparently they did. So that was kind of fascinating, going from that Ocean's 11 to Full Frontal. Fascinating.
A good counterbalance to it's hard to live up to a big splash examples.
Exactly. Speaking of big splashes and eccentrics, here we have a clip from Terrence Malick's first film called Badlands. Came out in 1974.
Kid, I got a question for you. You like people?
They're okay.
Then why'd you do it?
I don't know. I always wanted to be a criminal, I guess. Just not this big one. Takes all kinds of...
You know who that sumbitch looks like? You know, don't you?
No.
I'd kiss your ass if you don't look like James Dean.
That's from Terrence Malick's first film, 1974, Badlands, which created an unbelievable stir when it came out in 1974. And you've heard Jim and I talk about how great the early 70s were for American cinema. And, here's a classic example of that. Malick did, I think, 2 screenplays before this. One, Pocket Money with Lee Marvin and Paul Newman, which is a really good cult modern Western. Came out in 1972, but it kind of got lost in the mix of Junior Bonner with Steve McQueen, his modern Western, and J.W. Coop, Cliff Robertson's modern-day Western. But Badlands really connected. It's the true story of the Charles Starkwater killings in the Dakotas, I believe, in 1957. And it really launched the careers, I should say, of Martin Sheen and the lovely and talented, and what is she doing lately, Sissy Spacek. Great film. But here's what happens. He hits one out of the park, and this film, you had, because I remember this, I might be giving away my age a little bit. You had your highbrow movie critics, the Pauline Keels and whatnot, saying this is a great film, this is artistry, and it was playing in the drive-ins. Kids like me, going to watch the submarine races, actually stop necking and actually watch this movie and were blown away by it. Then he disappears, and he disappears for several years and comes back in 1978 to do Days of Heaven with Richard Gere, and 1978's It Girl, Brooke Adams, and then suddenly we don't see him for almost another 20 years, Kitty.
And what's so interesting is when he comes back, he comes out with a philosophical war movie, The Thin Red Line. A very, very deep, very introspective, very just intense film, not because of the war drama, but because of the introspection that is commanded in this film. And all of the top actors of the day are clamoring to be in the Thin Red Line, just based on essentially one film, Badlands.
That's it, yeah. And that's a phenomenon in itself. And will he ever make another movie? I don't know.
He was honored with a Academy Award nomination. Did not show to the awards, and I thought, how apropos, how fitting.
Yeah, I think that film was nominated for maybe 8, 9 Academy Awards. And this is from a man who didn't shoot one roll of film for 20 years. It's absolutely amazing. I find him quite fascinating. And here's a guy who he nailed it the first time out, almost like he did it. All the accolades came in, big box office smash, and then he just kind of walked away from it. I think the Terrence Malick story might make for an interesting movie someday.
Just specifically in the Thin Red Line, one of the things, as I mentioned, all the top actors of our day were clamoring to be a part of this, and he more often than not put the bigger the actor, the smaller the role.
You're absolutely right. When George Clooney just shows up at the end for that little piece where he's talking about a company's like a family, I'm the father, and he looks at Sean Penn, Sergeant. So Warden is like the mother, and Penn's rolling his eyes. I mean, that's brilliant.
Nick Nolte also. And usually I have a Nick Nolte role, but he was great and a very small role. This is also, I believe, the film that introduced Jim Caviezel.
Right.
As this very dreamy, interesting character in that movie.
It's fascinating because in the early runs of the film, it was going to be Adrian Brody's picture, and then he went back and re-edited the whole thing and made it Caviezel's picture, and he's great in it. Well, we're at the top of the hour, folks. This is Take Two, KCBX San Luis Obispo, KSBX Santa Barbara. We're stretching our arms and legs here. And while we've got a little break in the action, I just want you to know, Take Two is sponsored by the Look Young Center, offering the latest techniques in aesthetic medicine, including Botox and collagen, administered by board-certified physicians. In San Luis Obispo, you can call them at 597-8349.
And I'd like you to know that funds for this program are also being provided by Morin Brothers Automotive, starring Frida, the dog of many alter egos, who is always glad to sniff your tires. Morin Brothers Automotive on Broad near Tank Farm Road.
I wanna go to the movie show, me and my baby. Come on, let's go. On to the movie show. Let's go. I buy the popcorn as soon as we hit the door. My two brothers, Bell and Puns, sitting in the front row. They bought the candy. We don't need nothing more. I love a movie show, I tell you, in black and white. I don't care what it is. I don't care how small the theater is. I don't care who.
Well, we're back on Take Two, and Hank, our producer's got a big smile on his face, so I know we're in the downside of this hour here on Take Two. We're going to open up the phone lines, 549-8855, 1-800-549-8855. If you'd like to comment on first-time filmmakers, good ones, bad ones, we're here to talk. And while we're waiting for your calls, we're going to talk some more about first-time filmmakers.
And I'm looking forward to talking about this next director because this director directed one of my favorite movies, definitely on my top 10 list of all time, Sam Mendes. Sam Mendes directed American Beauty. Sam Mendes, let's just say, he was a well-known, well-regarded theatrical on-Broadway kind of director before he directed American Beauty. American Beauty was just a dazzling, fantastic movie. I'm going to offer up Sam Mendes. I'm hoping that he has many, many films to go that are just phenomenal contributions to the Academy of Film. But I want to talk specifically about The Road to Perdition, his second film. One of the things, this film was not regarded in the same, not at all. It was not regarded in the same high acclaim that American Beauty was. And one of the things that I distinctly noticed about Road to Perdition is things like he used the exact same director of photography. He used Thomas Newman to do the music. And even in watching Road to Perdition, it was almost like he was trying to capture some of the success that was created in American Beauty and implant it into his second feature. It did not do as well, not nearly as well in the box office, and it did not get the critical acclaim that American Beauty did, obviously. And I want to offer this as an example of, when your first film that you ever make wins the Best Picture Academy Award, with Kevin Spacey winning the Best Actor Award, where do you go from there? It was almost as if Road to Perdition was trying to capture lightning in a bottle, to use a cliche.
You know what's fascinating about this, Catherine? The cinematographer, by the way, is the late, great Conrad Hall, one of the best in the business. What I find, American Beauty was a phenomenon. I mean, this was not just a great film, but it really touched a nerve. I mean, some people actually hate this film because it cuts so close to the bone of what goes on behind the closed doors in American houses. I mean, yeah, there's just, he may not ever top this. You make
an excellent point in the sense of using the word phenomenon. How can you duplicate a phenomenon? I don't know that you can.
I don't know that you can. We try to do that every week here and come up short. I don't know.
Well, we'll talk more, but we do have some callers.
Hi, you're on the air.
Hello, am I the one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm Janet, San Luis Obispo.
Hiya, Janet.
Fine. Couple of things. First, I wanted to say about Ocean's 11, the two Ocean's 11. The second one is kind of good, but as far as I'm concerned, the first one has the soul, if you want to say it. Mm-hmm. It's got humor. It's a lot better film than people give it credit for.
Absolutely. Why I think what I don't understand about the remake is the original Ocean's 11 from 1960 captures a time and a place. It's Frank, it's Dino, it's Sammy, it's Vegas, it's JFK, it's Shirley MacLaine, it's Joey Bishop. That's what it's all about. How you recreate that, and they're all dead. So I think Joey Bishop is still alive. Please excuse me, Joey, if you're listening.
And maybe Angie Dickinson is still alive,
of
too.
Course.
Maybe.
And so is Shirley MacLaine. And your other point, Janet?
Yeah, well, but the new Las Vegas one is interesting in the contrast of, just how Vegas, the town, has grown. You see the later one, and it's humongous. And then you see the first one, and it's just almost like a motel. These little casinos are just almost like glorified motels.
It's turned into America's playland.
It's just incredible, the contrast. But first one is the one to get. Now, as far as your subject tonight, the fellow who did The Killing Fields, which I think is a damn great movie, tried to capture that with Mission and some flick in India, and as far as I'm concerned, they were duds compared to the Killing
Roland
Fields.
Joffrey?
That's it.
Yes. You're absolutely right, Janet. He never captured any. He kept trying to get that Killing Fields feel and couldn't get it.
And they were just jokes. Like
Yes.
the Mission was, okay. And the one in India, like, forget it.
Yeah,
You know?
pathetic.
So I just think that's a good example of your subject.
Thank you, Janet. That's an excellent example.
Okay, have a good day.
Have a good night. Good evening. You're on Take Two.
Hi there, this is Pete from Arroyo Grande.
Hi, Pete.
Hi, guys. There's one film I was thinking of, and it's Bad Lieutenant.
Aha.
And I was wondering if that fits into the framework, or if you have anything to say, or if that fits into tonight's program. That's all.
You know, Pete, this is an interesting question. The film Bad Lieutenant was directed by Abel Ferrara. He'd actually done a few films before that. Ms. 45, a rape revenge film along the vein of I Spit on Your Grave and some other very unpleasant and unsavory B-movie type films he had done before. Bad Lieutenant is a really interesting film. I mean, we know how tough and gritty and really brutal it is. He never, he's tried to many times over to catch that lightning in the bottle again and failed. Failed badly. I mean, I think of, there was that one film he did with Harvey Keitel and Madonna. It's about a filmmaker. I can't remember.
Wait a minute. Right there with Harvey Keitel and Madonna.
Yes, something's gone
there.
terribly awry there. And I don't think he's ever got back to where he was with Bad Lieutenant. And Bad Lieutenant was a phenomenon.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Pete.
Good night.
Good night. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, what happened with Abel Ferrara? Yes, he did The Funeral. He did King of New York. He did, that other Harvey Keitel thing. And he did something recently with the gal from The Sopranos. But it just not happening. Again, yeah, you had a great point, Catherine. How do you recreate phenomenon? You know, you hit it once, and Bad Lieutenant came out in the wake of Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs, and I don't think there's no influence there, but they're both hard and gritty, and where Tarantino has black humor, which has become his staple, Ferrara's work is totally lacking in any sentimentality or humor. It's harsh and brilliant, and he's never been able to recreate it again.
I'm glad you mentioned QT, Quentin Tarantino. He was also in my mind as we were thinking of this show topic. Kill Bill, a little disappointing, and I think that I am starting to defect. And I love the work of Quentin Tarantino up until this point. I am starting to believe that he's riding on his name, and he's riding on the status of being the insta-auteur, if you will. He's riding on the success and the way that he changed film previously with films like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. It just wasn't there for me. People, let's be honest, people were teetering with Jackie Brown. They respected that it was a little updated version of the blaxploitation film, but he's going to exhaust his genres of redoing. He's going to exhaust the redoing the kung fu,
right,
samurai action genre here with Kill Bill, and so the question becomes, what is he going to be doing next? And I would imagine it would be very hard. How can you live up to changing film? How can you live up to that again?
That's a good point, Catherine. I mean, let's face it, when he Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, he really put his stamp on film, and he did it very quickly. I don't even think he was prepared for what he was dealing with. I mean, you might remember his Academy Award acceptance speech for Pulp Fiction back in 1994. To him, it was like a big joke. thank you very much. Now I got to pee. And, of course, almost like what happened with Orson Welles, I think. The powers that be said, okay, we made you, kid. Now we're going to break you. I like Jackie Brown because at least he went against the grain. He said, okay, I'm going to try as much as I can not to make a Quentin Tarantino movie out of this. It was a bit subtler. Of course, De Niro hitting the bong that kind of got me. But I thought that was kind of interesting that he tried a toned-down film, and then nothing for years. Oh, we've got a caller. Oh, no, we don't. Well, no matter.
But what do I know? He's the president of the Cannes jury right now in France.
What happened? This guy was in Siberia for 7 years, and now he's the hottest thing since Mel Gibson's Jesus. What's going on? Oh, we've got a caller. Hi, you're on the air.
Okay, hi, I'm Sherry from San Luis Obispo.
Hi, Sherry.
When you mentioned Bad Lieutenant, that's one of my favorite movies. It's such a horrible descent into hell.
Isn't it great?
Makes.
It's horrible, yet I think it's one of the best films I've ever seen.
Sure, I really liked it, and I was wondering, I don't know anything about movie making, but I'm wondering if it has, about catching lightning in a bottle, if it has something to do with if you're trying to make a point with something that's really heartfelt for yourself, and so you come up with something in art, different kinds of art, not just movies, but you come up with something that really works because it's really coming from inside. I don't know. And then if you're merely trying to put something together, well, do you understand what I'm trying
Sherry,
to say?
If I might interject at this point, I think I do know where you're coming from. Because one thing I do know about Ferrara was he had a very bad problem with drugs. I don't know if he does anymore. I hope not. But maybe this was semi-biographical. In other words, he's trying to exorcise a demon. And this made it very personal for him. And I think that's a very good point, because I think that may have added to the effectiveness. Plus, Harvey Keitel, we know he's got a few demons and finds creative ways to, exercise them cinematically.
So it's
very good point.
Like a protest painting. Like if you're protesting as a painter, if you protest something that really is something deep within you, like what you were saying about this guy, Ferraro. Well, then you can come up with something maybe that's deep and true.
There's also in my mind is that also could kind of backfire on a filmmaker. I think this is the delicate balance between what works and what doesn't, because there are a lot of films that I don't necessarily think are heartfelt inspiration, and I have seen a lot of films that it's clear that it was a labor of love, and that doesn't translate, into being great filmmaking for storytelling. So
yeah.
It's that je ne sais quoi.
And that's why we come here every week trying to figure it out.
And Sherry, I just have to say I got such a kick out of you having just the sweet voice and saying Bad Lieutenant is one of your favorite films.
Oh, God, yes. Great.
You're going for the grit.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sherry.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good evening. You're on Take Two.
It's Cecile here.
Hi, Cecile.
Hi. I'm a dope because I can't remember the director, but I think he was one of the actors in the film. And the little film was Swingers.
Oh, Jon Favreau.
That was actually directed by Doug Liman.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
But I believe he wrote the screenplay.
Right.
Was he one of the actors?
Yes.
And I loved that film. It was like a little joke. It was just a little joke, on film. And the guy went about with all the angst of having broken up with his last girlfriend and moving to L.A. and trying to get into the comedy thing, and he was anything but his situation was, and his depression was comic, because we've all been there, I guess, and we could go, geez, yeah, I know how that feels. But he just was the furthest thing away from a comedy person, and then it was just at the end, when he met somebody that was interesting, he could have cared less about the girl. It was nothing totally mind-bending or revelatory or any of that stuff, but it was just a very sweet little movie, made basically
for nothing.
Yeah,
Right.
in the Los
Right.
Feliz area.
Well, and let's recognize that was a great start for Vince Vaughn was one of his first roles. Jon Favreau went on to direct a little known film called Elf last Christmas.
Yeah.
And Doug Liman, of course, he had a great hit with Go, which maybe didn't get the acclaim or the box office that it needed, but it's had a lasting impact. And he is behind the TV series The OC, which is very popular.
Cool.
So that was a great start for some talented people.
Yeah, and it made me smile. I didn't have to. I don't know. It was just you get hit over the head so much with film now, and it was just very, very. It was light and.
You know what I found interesting about it, Cecile, and this is something that I've kind of hearkened on in the past, is when I saw the trailers to Swingers, I said, there is no way in hell I'm going to go see this. A bunch of young guys cavorting around, drinking.
Yeah.
But you're right. There was so much. I literally had to go see that movie at gunpoint. I was dragged in, kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
And I left going, this was a great movie.
Yeah, it was.
And it is, because it's subtle and it's real, and the characters are very likable, and they're not shallow. They're just regular people.
Yeah.
And that was a great one.
That
right
was
out
a
of
good
the
one,
gate.
and it was a good start for some people, I think.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that addition to our conversation.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Cecile.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good evening. You're on Take Two.
Is that me?
That's you.
Hi, Sylvan, San Luis Obispo.
Hi,
How you guys doing?
Okay.
Well, I don't know if it's his first film, but was Cuckoo's Nest Milos Forman's debut or no?
Actually, his first film was in Czechoslovakia. Was it Loves of a Blonde or Fireman's Ball back in the 1960s, around 1965, 66? He was part of the kind of the Prague Spring, the opening of Czechoslovakia. They were experimenting with democracy in the mid-60s, and the art community was one of the leaders. Havel, who later became a president of Czechoslovakia, was a poet. I mean, and
prison poet.
He was Milos Forman was a part of that. I don't know if this One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was his first American film. I tend to think it wasn't, but to be honest, I can't remember what could have come before. And it seems like his career in Hollywood really took off after One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is an amazing film.
Well, I knew you would know with your encyclopedic knowledge.
Bless your heart.
Love the show, you guys.
Thank you so much.
If you'd like to join our conversation, our phone number is 549-8855 or 1-800-549-8855. And we're talking about the parabolic effect of directing. That's a title I made up.
And it's brilliant. That's why we love Kitty. She's a linguistic genius. Please. Where I'm here butchering the language, she's creating new verbiage. You know, I wanted to mention real fast about a film that we've talked about periodically on the show, and it's called Night of the Hunter, and it was directed by Charles Laughton. And believe it or not, folks, it's the only film he ever directed. Sometimes you can come out of the gate and be so far ahead of the curve that you're attacked by your peers, you're attacked by the critics, you're attacked by the studio heads. And let's face it, these people are artists. They want, they're somewhat sensitive. And poor Charles Laughton was heartbroken at the brutal response he got to Night of the Hunter back in 1955, starring Robert Mitchum, Shelley Winters, Miss Lillian Gish, Peter Graves, to the point where he never made another film. And what a shame that was, because this film was so far ahead of its time, so brilliant, and it plays so well now. I tell you, Catherine, I wish these filmmakers to aspiring filmmakers out there, I have one word of advice. Don't listen to criticism. Follow your own voices. Follow your own path. Follow your own drive. Don't listen to all these people saying what you're doing is wrong. Look at Ed Wood, for God's sakes. He never let the bad reviews get in the way of following his dream.
And I really think about how competitive the film industry is. And I think that most directors, they have to, at some point, get a hold of just believing in themselves. There's too many people saying no, 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 no. People right now who are filmmakers of tomorrow, they're working 3 jobs. They're doing, they're getting coffee as a PA all day. They're working on their shorts on the weekend, that they're really dedicated, and they're really having to get strong about that, following their own dream and following that passion that they have for film.
It reminds me of a story, Catherine. You might remember this. About 20 years ago, African-American comedian named Robert Townsend made a movie called Hollywood Shuffle, and it was a brilliant satire on how black actors and actresses are treated in Hollywood, how they're all classically trained and all they get to do is play pimps and whatnot. And what a brilliant film this was. And what's amazing about it is, as you were saying, Catherine, here's a guy, he's on the fringes, he has no money, he pays for the film with like 3 or 4 credit cards. He gets them maxed out to get his film made. And let me tell you, folks, at the time, the guy didn't, he had a couple of bit roles that were very good. Soldier's Story comes to mind he was in, but he was part of a powerhouse cast in that film. Adolph Caesar, Denzel Washington, et al. But what a gamble. He gambled everything he had, including money he didn't have, to make his film, and it was a major success. I mean, what happened afterwards? I don't know.
I think one of the things that you can see, though, is that a lot of young directors cite, especially African-American directors, cite Robert Townsend as being an influence. And I think that sometimes it has to wait for other directors to pick up from that inspiration, which I think in itself is moving.
That's a great point. He did open doors. He did do it through his drive, and he influenced other filmmakers. And that's huge. You can't say, well, what else did he do? Well, maybe he isn't doing it, but maybe Spike Lee has picked up the baton and is doing it now. And that's big.
It's always interesting to me how film is really an art form that just continually builds upon itself. It builds, it builds, it builds.
That's why we love movies, folks.
That is true.
Well, I think we're coming to the end of another Take Two program. I just want to say thank you, Catherine, and thank you to everybody out there. Thanks to Hank, our producer, and all-around good guy and go-to guy. We can't do what we do without Hank. And we'll be catching you all next week here on Take Two. Catherine?
Thank you, everybody, and please check out some of the things we were talking about earlier, not only the movies, but the events, the film events going on in our community. Thank you, everyone. Good night.